In American society, money is a taboo topic. We're taught at a young age it's improper to talk about it, but we're also bombarded with messages about the power and importance of money in our everyday lives. And by not talking about it, we miss out on the skills and lessons we need to effectively understand and financially plan. That changes today. Welcome to Money Tales. Hosted by Sandy Brager and Cami Doder, Money Tales brings more than 35 years of combined professional experience in personal finance to demystify money and demonstrate what it's like to speak openly about personal financial matters. Join us each episode as they interview modern-day movers and shakers about how money decisions intertwine with their daily lives in order to give you better insight into productive financial conversations. Subscribe today and register for our blog Fathom at aspiriant.com/podcasts to increase your money mojo. And now, here's Cami and Sandy.
Our guest this week on Money Tales is Kathleen Quinn. Hers is a story about the importance of not putting off to tomorrow what you can do today. Kathleen and her husband, Michael, were updating their estate plan when Michael asked if they could set up a scholarship to help students. Kathleen, who had spent 35 years in university alumni relations and development, immediately said, "Absolutely." Michael insisted the scholarship be in Kathleen's name, honoring her decades of hard work. In 2020, just 3 weeks after signing the scholarship paperwork, Michael was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and 4 months later, he was gone. Kathleen shares how grateful she is that they didn't put this important project off. Today, Kathleen is an executive coach who guides her clients to own the power they already have to lead a life of purpose and impact. She's also a certified grief educator.
Here are 3 key money topics Kathleen hits on in this conversation. First, the power that the personal financial planning process had on her and Michael's ability to understand the financial independence they had achieved. Second, how money isn't good or bad, it's neutral. It's a vehicle to do things. The important questions to ask yourself are, how do you think about money? What are the stories you tell yourself about money? And what, if anything, would you like to change about that? And third, how wealth is acquired, but abundance is something you embrace in your heart. We hope you share this episode with a friend, and please subscribe to Money Tales on your favorite podcast platform. Now on to our conversation with Kathleen Quinn.
Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. This is Cami Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager. Cami, in a lot of conversations I've been having with clients, prospective clients, friends, even in some of the things I'm reading in the press, inheritance has been coming up a lot.
Okay, let's talk about it.
There's a lot of people who have a lot of emotions around inheritance. And what I've been hearing is I think I'm going to inherit some money. I'm not totally sure. How do I think about it? How do I have a conversation with my parents or my grandparents or whatever family member it is so that I can plan accordingly? And this can be some of the most awkward but most valuable conversations to have.
It's hard because you're talking about someone passing on, but you want to have your money conversation and be thoughtful about it all.
That's right. Where I always start from is when you're thinking about your own personal financial plan. It's best not to plan for inheritances. It's okay to maybe put in a little placeholder and see what that might do to the results of your plan. But otherwise, we think it just makes the planning process much more straightforward. And if there is an inheritance that you receive, then at that point, you can really plan around it. That said, if you're curious about whether you might be the recipient of an inheritance, it's best to ease into a conversation with whoever you think you might be inheriting money from to check in with them. How are they doing? How are they thinking about their financial future? Do they feel well-resourced? Are there ways you could be supportive to them and open up the conversation that way?
That's beautiful, Sandy. And I believe it leads to conversations around how they hope their money would be used and how it would benefit others. And that can be a really beautiful conversation.
Exactly. So you want to build up to that over time, because I have seen so many situations with clients who have inherited money where there has been no conversation and they receive these wonderful financial resources and sometimes they can be paralyzed around what to do with it because they're so concerned about making the right decisions. What would my relative have wanted me to do with these resources? They're just not sure, and it paralyzes them. So over time, if you can ease into the conversation about expectations, about vision, that will just make things so much better for you. And also, I think for the person or people who might be giving you a financial inheritance someday. And maybe it's not even about the finances. Maybe you're inheriting wisdom. Maybe you're inheriting values. There's so much more than just money that enriches each of us.
That is priceless. When you know there could be something coming your way, the conversation might start from the point of what do I want to do with this money? But the really joyful conversation is understanding who that person is and being able to ask the questions about their childhood and their life and what mattered to them that might help you understand how you want to honor them with the money you might inherit. And the joy is the conversation with them. It's not the money.
That's spot on, Kathleen. That's the true gift. I think you're right.
Perfect segue to introduce you. Kathleen Quinn, it is a pleasure to be talking with you on Money Tales.
I am thrilled to be on Money Tales. I thank you for the invitation because I so believe that money is a taboo topic. And any time I can help someone release that, it's a joy.
Wonderful. Would you briefly introduce yourself and share a couple pivotal moments that have really impacted who you are today?
Absolutely. The first one, without question, has to be the privilege I had being born into the Quinn family of Meyer Avenue, Madison, Wisconsin, back in the 60s. I grew up as the youngest of 6 kids, 4 brothers, 1 sister, a loving family. My parents were fun-loving. They were involved in the community. They put us through 12 years of Catholic education. We were a tight-knit family. And my mom always said she raised 6 tolerant children because there were 8 of us that lived under 1,500 square foot house and 1 bathroom.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
That's how we started. And it sounds like a modest upbringing, and it was. But unlike some of the coaching clients I have where they talk about their parents saying, you can't have that, we don't have the money for that, I never heard, we can't afford to give you that or get that for you. What I always heard was a value proposition. Take, for example, college. Some of my friends were going out of state. They were going to private colleges. And what my mom said to me was, look, the state of Wisconsin has invested heavily in creating a system of great universities. And by the way, our tax dollars are paying for them. So you don't need to go anywhere else. 17 years old, youngest of 6, I accepted my mother's value proposition, and I went to one of the state schools. I did not go to Madison. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. That move was so invaluable to me because while I majored in business and got a degree with a focus in marketing, my real education came through student government. I was involved each of the 4 years, like I'd been in high school, and a student allocations committee where we allocated student fees. And what the value there was, is I got to know the university leaders and I started to understand how universities worked. Then I started looking at jobs and they were sales jobs. They just left me cold, selling checks, selling equipment. No, it left me cold. And so what did I do? I walked right into the chancellor's office, being boldly visible as a young woman, and said, I think I want to work at the university. Do you think there's a job here for me? Maybe an alumni or development or something? And he said, go see the head of the foundation. And 3 days later, I'm sitting there in that man's office and he's offering me a job that they've created that's halftime alumni and halftime development that's backing up the 2 women who were sole leads in these areas. And I thought, oh, that's cool. I got to make $12,000 a year in 1983. I was stoked.
You say 1983, I can almost see the shoulder pads that you must have been wearing to work every day.
Big hair.
The cowl neck sweaters. Yes, absolutely. I fell into this line of work. There was no career path that said university alumni and development is a career path. I fell into it, but then I fell in love with it. It became a 35-year journey for me. And I ended up taking early retirement at Stanford University where when I retired, I had been an assistant vice president for close to a decade, I think. And why did I love it? I'm a competitive kid. And the big numbers at a place like Stanford were exciting to be a part of, campaigns of billions of dollars. But it was never about the money. It was about what the money could do for our students and what our students and our faculty could do for the world. And I'm not saying that Stanford was solo in that. This country has a great system of higher education. It's something I'm so proud of about our country. But my experience was at Stanford. Coming to Stanford, I was a little terrified. The names, the people that I was dealing with, these were Forbes 400 list people. They could give 6, 7, 8, even 9-figure gifts. And I thought, why are they going to trust me? Why are they going to relate to me? I'm this little kid who got 50 cents an hour babysitting. How could I do this? And what I learned that was the greatest gift was when you are authentic and when you ask questions without an agenda, to just know what people's hopes and dreams are and where they get stuck and where they struggle, and you listen, then the shared humanity comes into play. And that net worth number just fades away. That was my life for 18 years with some amazing, amazing humans. Every once in a while, there was some real magic that happened when they saw a path to something they really wanted to do. And maybe I helped get them there. And then to see the students or the faculty who benefited from it. And then years later, to be able to report back to them how that went. It was such a joy. And it led me to a very different space around the power of being vulnerable, the power of love, the power of communication. And that was with Michael, the man I married in 1998, the love of my life. In my 40s, we were working hard. We were traveling. We didn't have kids because we got married when I was 36. We were traveling. We were having all kinds of fun and doing hard work. We were not thinking about legacy. We were not thinking about how much money we had. And then in my early 50s, we found a financial advisor, Sandra, amazing. She's still with me. And she helped us understand through that Monte Carlo analysis that given what we had, given what our budgets were like, even with the fluctuations in the market, we had a better than 90% chance to have money left over, even if we both lived to be 100. That was a new concept to us. We said, oh, well, good. Then we're comfortable, because we were both Midwest kids. We couldn't say any word higher than comfortable. And we said, we're independent enough that I could take early retirement. Stanford had a great program. So at 57, I took early retirement. We moved to Oregon to be at the Shakespeare Festival, and we were having a great time there. But then once the pandemic hit, we start redoing our estate. And Michael says to me, do you think it's possible that we have enough money now that we could set up a scholarship and have students benefit today? And I looked at him and I said, absolutely. You know how much scholarships mean to me. And he goes, yes, I do.
That's why I'm talking to you about it.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And he said, if we do it, it can only be in your name. And I said, why? It's our money. He goes, who was the person who would come home and try to tell me student scholarship gratitude stories and you couldn't get them out through the tears? That would be me. In essence, what he said to me was, this is what I want to do with you and for you. We did it. And here's why it's pivotal. We didn't have anyone really telling us that we had acquired some wealth and we had abundance and maybe we would want to do something with it. We didn't learn that. We just fell into it. We find the Oregon Community Foundation. We signed the papers September of 2020 to set up the scholarship. 3 weeks later, Michael gets confirmation of a stage 4 pancreatic cancer diagnosis.
Oh, Kathleen.
He died 4 months, almost to the day after we signed the scholarship papers. Here's why I tell you that. What if he hadn't brought up the scholarship idea? Where would I be today? I'd be sitting there talking to Sandra saying, well, he'd probably like a scholarship. I know purpose he likes, but can I put his name on it? Should I put his parents' name on it? Should I put my name on it? But how can I put my own name on it? And I get frozen, just paralyzed. And I wouldn't know what to do. And I'd probably do nothing. What I think is so many people get stuck for whatever their reasons are. Maybe they've recognized that they have wealth, but they haven't learned how to live with it with abundance. I got a little window of that with Michael. And that's what's caused me to do what I do. And so that's me.
Kathleen, this was a great introduction and tragic too. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
We want to go get into some of these pivotal moments. And if I may, I love the story of you growing up. You did not live in scarcity. You lived in abundance with this family. Money, it sounds like, was being modeled really productively. And you had this orientation towards the value proposition, which I loved. When did money even start having meaning to you when you were younger?
We might have lived with abundance because my parents were so optimistic and positive and didn't trouble us with their troubles. I think if they were standing here today, they'd be like, we had what?
But they made you feel that way.
But they really made us feel that way. Here's when 4 boys, they never had to have their clothes made by mom. My sister and I, mom made all of our clothes. So going to Joann Fabrics, picking out Butterick pattern number 4497, modeled for the teenage girl dress, and picking out fabric. That was my life. When I got to college and I could buy my own clothes, it's why I'm still a clothes horse today. It's still why if I see something that I want, well, I want to buy that. I'm finally learning how to dial that back and say, you really don't need that, but I can have it if I want it. That was a real factor in my family. I think the other thing is that my dad was in sales. He was a vice president of a local company and he sold products to restaurants. He was never going to tell you how much of a deal he closed, but he'd tell you what it was and why it mattered to him. There was only one time when he told me his biggest contract and he landed it right before he retired and he was so proud of it. Just that notion that it doesn't have to be about the money. It's about what you do that matters. And not that I feel like I heard that lesson being told to me, but it was just infused in the way he would talk about his work. And my mom was a volunteer. So I always said I went into alumni and development because my dad was in sales and my mom was a volunteer and I just mushed them together. And that you had a responsibility to do things for your community. I still have this letter that my mom typed and mimeographed that went to the other parents about helping the teachers at school and what was the best way to do that and to raise some money instead of just baking things.
Kathleen, I appreciate what you're bringing forward with how strong values are woven throughout your life and how you've always been focused on purpose and intent and values as opposed to dollars. And interestingly, you've lived a life surrounded by dollars, that you were a professional dollar worker developing money for all these different universities you were working for. And I'm wondering, what advice do you have for our listeners about money conversations? Your job was ultimately to ask people to provide financial resources to the university.
People get a lot of pressure. Once anyone knows that there are potential donors that have a lot of resources, they have to be ready to have these conversations with their family. I remember distinctly where I was in San Diego when I read a New York Times article and Bill Gates was being castigated for not having given away his money. And he said, I'm running my business. A day will come when I focus on philanthropy. It's just not now. And boy, howdy, I think he figured it out. So I think you have to be ready. And it means you have to have conversations with your family. And that takes vulnerability and it takes time. Acquiring wealth or embracing the abundance does not happen overnight. It also does not happen without intention and vulnerability. And probably the most important lesson is neither of those things, how you got your money or how you use it, neither of those things define your self-worth. I am worthy for who I am because I am here on this earth, and the numbers are charge neutral. So many people think money is good or bad. Money is neutral. It is a vehicle to do things. The question is, how do you think about it? What are the stories you tell yourself about it? And what would you like to change about that? Because you can change your thinking about it. And once you go through those conversations, then knowing where you want to be involved, you can set boundaries for yourself. Okay, we'll do annual fund giving here and there because it's our schools, our alma maters, our kids' schools, whatever. But we don't have to be forced into buying a table because one of the two of you asked me to buy a table. I can say no. That's not what I do.
We always refer to those as the nice no's.
You're right. We all have nice no's, but it's being confident in your skin about that. And that takes a long time to get to because you see all these different people interacting in different ways. And just know that your own money journey, it's your own. You can make it what you want it to be. You don't have to accept the judgment of anyone else. Oftentimes we put that judgment on ourselves from someone else. And if we don't like how someone else is doing something, it's probably because there's something under that bothers us. It's really getting comfortable with yourself. That would be my advice.
You've learned these really important skills. I would love to hear how you brought them into your own life, especially as you were advancing in your career. When you met Michael and you guys decided to come together, you told us decisions you made toward the end of your marriage, but what was happening in the beginning? How are you bringing what you learned professionally into your own personal life?
He was so wise. He was flawed too, but he was the one who said, let's not merge our funds until you feel comfortable with it. He was very sensitive to, I was a woman professional. I was achieving all of this. He didn't want me to feel like I was suddenly subsumed into the man's assets. Plus, it was slightly complicated because his first wife, who died at 40, he had her assets too. And he was deciding what to do with those. So for a while, we literally had separate checking accounts, actual separate checkbooks. And then after a while, we decided, okay, this is silly. We should just merge all of this. But he really wanted to respect that I had earned this. I had become a professional woman of some success and means. And he didn't want me to have any of that taken away by being married as we were.
You talked about working with your financial advisor and getting to this point where you learned you had enough. Tell us about that process and that feeling and the conversations you and Michael had after you had that very pivotal meeting.
I think it was exciting because it opened this door to what's possible. And I knew Stanford had this, you could take early retirement and still be able to buy into the healthcare system if your age and years of service equaled 75. So I knew what that date was for me. But I was like, well, I don't know that I do that though. But then once we realized we were going to be okay, that we were comfortable, that we could be independent, then it was, all right, what's possible? And it even started before that. We were living in Pacifica, California, very modest city in the Bay Area. And we decided to move down to Palo Alto when I was working at Stanford. And we bought a house there. And to go from his 20-year house that he had, the mortgage, you couldn't even rent something for his mortgage, to a Palo Alto house in 2007 was crazy. But we had another banker who helped us understand that was possible for us. And it would actually help launch us. So when we sold that house in Palo Alto, that also fed into our ability to be, as people in Oregon say, equity immigrants, bringing our money in and buying a house in Oregon.
Sounds like it also allowed you to dream.
Yes, it did. We were going to travel. We went to this cool cooking school in France. We could do things with our nieces and nephews. We didn't have kids, but we both had 11 nieces and nephews, and they have kids. So we got to do things with them. So much was possible. We could dream.
So you're dreaming for many years. You put this very cool scholarship together. And then Michael has an untimely death. What happened to your money life when he died?
It's interesting. It was the early part of the pandemic. I was so grateful that he died at home because otherwise I'd still be in a corner. I had to say goodbye to him on a phone. I called everybody I needed to call. I was okay. I was holding it together. I took a shower. I went for a walk. And I called Sandra, my advisor, to say, what do I need to do? And that's when I lost it, because she was there for me and she had been there for us and she knew him. And the way she talked to me, years later, I thought, okay, what does that say about me that the first person I cried with was my financial advisor? But she was so present for me and she said, we're going to figure this out. And it made me realize I had to think about what I wanted. and what I could do. And that's when it changed. Well, I got a really good David Kessler, a really good grief guy, national expert, was running an online program. I became a certified grief educator through him. And through him, I met Nancy Levin, who has a coaching academy where you really go deep with people. And it was through those experiences over the next year that I realized I wanted a real business out of this. I wanted to affect people's lives and really make a difference. And I knew I had enough money that I could invest in myself with training. I could travel for a conference. I could charge what I wanted to charge, all of those kinds of things. And I could even buy the condo I wanted to buy when I moved home to Madison, Wisconsin. Ashland was going to be our retirement place. I needed to come home and be around my brothers and my sister. She's in Florida, but it's easier for her to get here. And my high school and college friends, because I said to them, being here, I'm bubble wrapped in love. I can fall over, but I'll always bounce back up because I've got all of you. So all of that is tied into the money stuff. Here was one hard moment. I bought a condo that was pretty delightful. It was very different than what I might have had if I had stayed in Madison and grown up here. And so I had some head games around, is that the right thing to do? But it was what I wanted, and I knew it was going to serve me. And so I went ahead and did it. But it was kind of hard at first. A lot of conversations with my sister to say, do you think this is the right thing? I wanted a home that made me feel safe and good and someplace I could be for a long time. So that was a big money decision for me. I've only done one other philanthropic thing since Michael died, and that was at the hospital where he had been treated and I had been treated, and they were building a children's hospital. And Michael had been very sick from 5 to 7 and nearly died. I thought his parents never got to pay that forward, so I was going to do it at the hospital. And my dear friend, Jennifer, helped me figure that out. So I did that one thing philanthropically. And now I'm just steady state figuring out what I'm going to do. But I bought an e-bike. I take e-bike trips with different family and friends. Every year I go a different place. The money I have has freed me, but it's really because I've done the work to know that I can be free and that the money is that vehicle for it.
I'm really glad you talked about the work you did to allow yourself to be free, because there's a lot of people with wealth that don't let themselves actually go there. And so you're a coach. I love that you wanted to affect people's lives and you invested in that. Would you talk a little bit about coaching conversations you have with your clients around money?
In the last 5 years, I have talked with them about it to understand what are the stories they tell themselves about it. What are the shadow beliefs they have about money? It doesn't come up always directly. It will come up about, I have to stay in this job. Why do you have to stay in this job? I have to have security. What does security give you? Why? So it's a lot of questions. I have no agenda. I just want to understand where it comes from. And then they will say something like, my dad lost his job and he never recovered from it. And I can't have that happen to me. I can't let my kids go through what I went through. Are you going to go through what your dad went through? No. Why not? I have more savings than he ever had. Okay. So what does that tell you now? So it's those kinds of conversations. And then last year, I started this new branch of my business, which is really to work with people, as we've been talking about, who have the capacity, who have reached a point of having an abundance, having wealth. And what I say to them is, it's the fundamental premise of this work. Wealth is acquired. Abundance is embraced in the heart. You can live your life and acquire a lot. We had one person say, I'm still in accumulation mode. And I'm like, you're on the Forbes list. He goes, I can't give away yet. I so wish I could talk to him now. The analogy that I use is, this is what Michael and I didn't have. You can walk up to the edge of a riverbank and declare, yes, I have enough. Yes, I'm comfortable. For some people, yes, I have wealth. On the other side of the riverbank are all these people who are living with abundance. They have embraced it. They're good. They're doing all the things they want to do. They found a bridge over that river. Michael and I had to find that on our own. And the problem is what's in the river are rapids of fear and guilt and shame and disbelief. And what I do as a coach, I help them walk along and find the bridge, and they build their bridge to get over there. And then they can live fully and in abundance for much longer than Michael and I got to. And that's why I do it.
Kathleen, that's beautiful. There's so many bridge building opportunities. I'm glad you're working on that. Tell us, what's your next money conversation going to be, and who's it going to be with?
It is going to be with one of my clients doing the abundance coaching work. And she was actually someone who heard a talk I gave once. And she said it changed her life. It changed how she was thinking about what she was going to do, her legacy. Now she wants to understand a little bit more about what's possible in her life. And so we're going to start her coaching next week.
Kathleen, that's wonderful. You are changing lives. I love this abundance coaching you're doing. Would you share with our listeners, where is the best place to find you digitally?
KathleenAQuinn.com, or as my niece says, Kathleen a Quinn. That is my website. There's a contact place where you can actually just pick a time on my calendar and set up time to meet with me. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Kathleen, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you on Money Tales. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. It was empowering.
Thank you for doing this work. And thanks to Julie Castro Abrams and How Women Lead for connecting us. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening. And leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Aspirient. Go to aspirient.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@aspirient.com. See you next time.